Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Maurice Brown Comedy Show on Bog Radio in association with 24 Flicks and RadioQDX.com out of Lucama, North Carolina, and KCHF TV out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, TV 11. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the show. And we've got a very special guest on our show today, a director with 5 feature films, A Perfect Chord, Second Greatest, A High School Story, Scion, and Sleeper Agent. To his credit, as a writer, director, cinematographer, and editor, he's cultivated his calling to create high-level crossover films with a Christ-centered message. And his latest film effort is Empty Nets. It's underway. He's also got an episodic on PureFlix called FRAGMENT OBLIVION, a 6-episode series. So you want to check that out. Please welcome to the show, Director Nathan Blair. What's up, Nathan? How are you?
Good. How are you? I feel like I owe you an apology. I'm actually at the total of 7 feature films. So I've gone even more. I keep doing it. So yeah, no worries. I've had Stealing the Show and Once Upon a Christmas, which should be coming out this winter. So yeah.
Oh, okay. I love it. I love it. Once Upon a Christmas. That's right. So you're just moving and grooving right now, Nathan. You are doing a lot of tremendous things in faith-based films, and there's a lot of stuff I want to cover this morning. But first thing I want to talk about is your current effort, Empty Nets, and filming is underway, and you know, this is a film that is a comedy, which I think faith-based films need more comedies. We need more comedies in the Christian filmmaking industry. It's just no question about it. So I'm glad to know that you're doing that. You did Sleeper Agent with Leland Clausen a couple of years ago. And I thought that film was absolutely hilarious to me. You had some really funny people in there. And of course, having Leland as your lead, you can't miss. But in reference to Empty Nets, tell us about this current project.
Well, it's actually a collaboration between myself and Leland Clausen again. So Leland came to me end of last year, and he said, "You know, I got an idea for a film. We had done this kind of proof of concept for a sitcom called Empty Nets. We had shot it at the Content Film Festival on site, just kind of as a trial, and we thought it was okay. You know, would have liked more than 3 hours to shoot 8 pages, which was what we did, you know, I felt like it was solid enough that, you know, if it came back around, it'd be cool to do. And I love working with Leland. So he came back and he said, "You know, I got a guy who wants to invest in something. I've already made a connection with Tammy Lane at Capernaum Studios, and they've agreed to partner with us. What would you think about turning Empty Nets into a feature film?" And so that's what we did. We took it from a sitcom idea, turned it into a feature. We partnered with Capernaum and started production in January on site there in Texas. And we had our fair share of trials, like most films do. We had 20-degree weather in Texas, which was not what we expected. And then we had some freezing pipes that they had to graciously fix for us. But we were moving along, and then about halfway through on a Saturday, Leland wanted to hop in there and be helpful because he's not on camera yet, and he was helping with the stunt, and ended up was pulling a rope, ended up wrapping his hand the wrong way right before we called action, and broke the fingers on his left hand, and broke them in such a way that he needed reconstructive surgery. And he had to go back to Canada to get that. So we had to shut down and suspend production halfway into filming. We still had about 2 weeks left. And so we've been navigating what that life is like, kind of shutting it down, keeping the energy and the excitement going. And the thing that's really great about Empty Nets is it's a first-century comedy, which you don't get a lot of, right? It's not irreverent, but It's about a guy he's this kind of failed inventor, and he takes a loan from a loan shark, and when the loan shark comes to collect, he decides he's going to take his wife, and they're going to move to Copernic, our made up name, outside the Sea of Galilee, and take over his uncle's fishing business to try and get away from this guy who was going to do not nice things. Essentially, he's a mobster, right? He's not a nice guy. And so we ended up putting it together, writing it. I think it's hilarious. It's got a lot of satirical humor into it that plays out really well, and it's Leland, so there's lots of humor there. We've got a lot of really funny people. We released our first clip. I mean, it's been a blast to work with him on it, and the cast is amazing. We're really excited about who we have with that.
Yes, you have a great cast. Leland is hilarious, no question. Leland and I are working on a Christian comedy tour right now, tentatively for the summer. And with about 20 other Christian comedians. This is just a great vision God has given me. And so I'm very familiar with Leland. I've done a couple of several shows with him, and he's just hilarious. And like I said, Sleeper Agent, I'm going to talk a little bit more about Sleeper Agent in a moment, but getting back to Empty Nets, it's a first century comedy. I wanted to ask you, does it have kind of a Monty Python vibe to it?
Actually, no, that was one of the things we worked really hard on, was to not let it fall into so ridiculous that you're almost taken out of the story what we wanted, because it presents the gospel in a really cool way. And so we wanted the humor to open up the doors. We wanted people to buy into what it is that we were doing, mainly because we wanted that message to kind of take root. And we figured if we went too crazy one way or the other, we'd actually do a disservice to the story and to the message we were trying to tell. So
absolutely. And the reason that I mentioned, obviously, Monty Python's, they're like off on the deep end there, but in reference to the comedic value that those films brought, it was pretty darn good. They're not going where we're going, Nathan, right. Although very, very funny. They're not going where we're going, but I thought there might be a kind of a lineup in the hilarity aspect of Monty Python versus Empty Nets. But it's
Empty Nets Empty Nets is extremely funny. It's very satirical of the times. We make light of a lot of things that you would look at in a present time and look back and be like, of course they don't think the world is round. And now that's the conspiracy. He's got a best friend who he meets down there, who's the conspiracy nut, who, talks about how the world is actually a big ball. And they're like, no, it's not. This guy's crazy. And he talks to, this guy's also talking about how birds aren't real. And like, you get this kind of really funny humor that plays into it. You've got really great characters. You got a Roman centurion who is just too nice to be a Roman centurion. You've got neighbors, quirky characters all over the place, but it all ties together in a really, really sweet story.
Well, I love the idea. Like I said, we need more comedies and faith-based films, and you're kind of forging a way. I mean, as I mentioned before, you've done Sleeper Agent with Leland Clausen, which was absolutely hilarious. And now you're doing, I can't wait to see Empty Net. Speaking of comedians, you've got Christian McCarthy. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. I think it's Christian McCartney.
Yeah. Chris McCartney. Yeah.
What's it like working with? He's pretty funny.
He is a very funny guy, and we're really excited to have him. We didn't get a chance to film with him yet because his part was coming right up after we had to suspend. So we'll be working with him this May when we get back to production. But I'm really looking forward to it. Looking forward to having him on, and his sense of humor was really apparent in our table read. And so we tried to put him in a role that he could kind of play with and bring some life to. So we are looking forward to working with him for sure.
He's a fireball on stage, super animated, young, energetic comic. Christian comedian of all things, which I think is really awesome. Yeah, he's just a force. So it's good to see that he's a part of it. Now, I understand all the things that are going on, the mishap with Leland and production being held up for just a little bit here. It'd probably be hard for you to answer this question, but I'll just throw it out anyway. Do you have a kind of target date that you'd like to hit for the completion and release of the film?
As far as a release, that part I don't have an exact date, but we are actually getting back into production starting April 26th. And then we work for a couple weeks into May, and so that we can wrap up production. We've actually started an Indiegogo campaign to kind of help with some of the costs. There's things that people are like, why do an Indiegogo campaign? Well, there are certain things that you didn't know you were going to have to pay twice. You didn't know you were going to have to come back and pay insurance a couple of times, have hard costs to the studio. You're going to have some of these things that you're like, I didn't know we were going to be doing that a couple of times, and you can only budget so much in a certain way. So we started an Indiegogo campaign last Monday, a week ago, and already generosity of people have been absolutely fantastic. We've raised over half of what we need, which has been amazing. So we're really hoping that we keep going and trending in that way, and people can give and support what we're doing and get back to work soon. So as far as the release, man, we'd love to release it fall time, but the way that windows work in distribution, that may end up being, later. Hopefully we can get it turned around pretty quick. So,
ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Maurice Brown Comedy Show on Bog Radio with Director Nathan Blair. Good morning. And we're talking about his current film project, Empty Nets. And Leland Klassen, who's the star of the film, got himself injured. I don't know if I mentioned this before. How was the healing hand, if you will, going for Leland?
He just got the pins out yesterday.
Okay.
So he is in the process of kind of the final stages of healing, and then the physical therapy to get the use back and everything back where it belongs and how it's supposed to work. So he's working through that. His big concern is his beard, right? Wanting it to be as authentic as possible. He grew out his beard for like 3 months. He has this nice big beard. And then after he hurt his hand, he went home and he trimmed it pretty short and went, wait, am I going to have enough time to grow this back? So now he's doing all kinds of, home remedies and whatever he can to grow that beard back as fast as he can by the time we get to production. That's the thing he's asked prayer for more than anything was his beard. Can we pray that God would make my beard grow bigger and thicker, which, is really important, but it's kind of just a Leland thing to ask for. So
yes.
Beard length is a big deal.
Well, we'll pray for him. I think God can handle that. Well, we'll put up a prayer for him for that beard to get fuller. So speaking of Leland, I was talking about Sleeper Agent earlier. I wanted to ask you this, like I said, a very, very funny film. And I don't know what the budget was for the film. I mean, when you're talking about faith-based films / indie, budgets are not huge. But what you did with that film was tremendous. And it was very, very funny. And I'm hopeful, and I've said this to my wife and other people, for a sequel. Have you ever considered that?
It's funny you say that. That is something that's on our radar to try and put together as a Sleeper Agent 2. I actually posted just earlier today a question on, who would be interested in seeing a Sleeper Agent 2. And I've been pleasantly surprised by the response of people that would be for Sleeper Agent 2. So Leland and I have talked about it a lot. We've talked about what we would do with it, where the story would go, and how we would make the humor work. And I actually feel like we have something in mind that's pretty funny. It would definitely up the ante on Sleeper Agent, the first one. So that part's what's fun for us, and having a story that's really good. Not just doing it for the sake of it, but doing it because we're like, this would be funny. This would bring some some humor and some light to what we're trying to do. So we are working on something like that and putting that together, as well as, I've got a bunch of other projects working on. So, if you're sitting around and you're like, what do I do with all of this money in my account? You just hit me up and we can figure something out for you. We'll find a way to get that taken care of.
I tell you right now, that was a really good film, and it's got so many funny people in the film to go along with Leland, like Matt Falk and Mark Christopher Lawrence. I think her name is, she's not a comedian, but she was very comedic in her role. I think it's Jacqueline Otero. I know I don't have the name right, but she was the serious female agent.
Yeah, Julie.
She got
Julie
into a fight with
yeah.
What's her name?
Julie Crescenti. Yeah.
I feel bad I don't remember her name, because she's been on my show before. I've interviewed her. She's a very good actress, but she was very funny in her role in that film. And there were so many elements of hilarity in the film, as you're playing off of a type of James Bond in a way, quasi sense. And it was just great. And you could see the potentiality of Sleeper Agent being on like a really big level. And think about faith-based filmmaking, as I mentioned a moment ago, about the funding and the budgets. I mean, what you did with that, with what you had, was quite amazing. And it would be just, I'm going to pray for you, because I think if the Lord blessed you, Nathan, with just a ton of money to do a sequel to this, it would get, overall national attention. It's that funny. It's really that funny.
I appreciate that. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. That would be pretty amazing. It'd be pretty amazing to be able to put together a solid story, to be able to up the ante in a lot of the ways that we would want to, in terms of not just the humor, but some of the production value pieces. Blow something up, or get a helicopter, or some crazy thing that happens. We need Leland, who's supposed to walk away from an explosion but trips and falls, or something just ridiculous, because that's what we need.
Well, the comedy is all there in the script, and that's where you got to start. A lot of people do things and they just, I want to do something for the Lord, and they just throw it against the wall and hope it sticks. It's very obvious that a lot of productions you see in faith-based filmmaking. It's gotten a whole lot better, though, over the last decade or so. But that's not the case here in Sleeper Agent. It's very well written. The comedy is very well written. And of course, if that's done, that's more than half the battle right there. And Gigi Orsillo was a part of that film. I had a chance to interview her, and she's gone on and done, a couple of more films. She's kind of on a roll lately. What's it like working with Gigi?
It's fantastic. I love Gigi. She's a dear friend. So fortunate enough that we live in the same city, so we get to see each other. And she's kind of my go-to in a lot of places. I really want to work with her more. She's got a great attitude on set. She's really prepared. She works hard. She's a blast to be around. One of the things that I really appreciate Gigi is she's just kind of up for anything. She's like, okay, yeah, let's do this. We were doing the Sleeper Agent. She had this stunts, and she was like, yeah, no, I'm doing them. Let's do this. How do I do it? She was ready to mix it up. And she can switch very quickly. She understands the comedic beats. She understands the serious beats. She doesn't take herself too seriously, which makes it a lot easier to work with. So working with her it's been fantastic. And watching her and Leland, they go to another place when they work together. It's kind of funny. They exist in a different plane. Their friendship grew pretty quick, so it came through pretty easily on screen.
I mentioned Matt Falk earlier, who's absolutely hilarious. He wasn't in the film a lot. The small part that Matt had was it had me chuckling big time, dude. And he's a great stand-up comedian out of Canada, as is Leland. and very funny. And I certainly hope to work with Matt in the near future as well. I've been collaborating with him from time to time. But and by the way, my friendships with these two comedians came from Sleeper Agent. I saw the film, and I've got to have these two guys on my show, and Mark Christopher Lawrence for that matter. But you know, and Mark Christopher Lawrence is not just a good comedian; he's a really good comedian, stand up. But he might even be a better actor.
Yeah, he doesn't get enough credit for his dramatic ability. He was the lead in Fragment Oblivion, and one of the things I wanted to do was to help him break type a little bit, and not just be the comedy guy. He delivered extremely well. You know, he kind of presented the heart of Fragment really well, and so working with Mark is a pleasure. It's kind of fun to see him do his thing. You know, we'll do a take and it's serious, and then, you know, he's cracking a joke later on, or he's singing a song in the corner, and then it's time to go back to work again. And, you know, he's got to be serious. And, you know, he was like Gigi. He was like, let's do these stunts. He was ready for it. And he wanted to go for it as much as he possibly could, which was fantastic. So he definitely does not get enough credit for being a serious actor. He's very, very skilled in that regard.
He's super talented, and also a Christian comedian that I intend on collaborating with as far as the Comedy in the Kingdom tour goes. Very, very talented guy. You're talking about Fragment Oblivion, which is on PureFlix as we speak. Folks, if you've never seen it, go to PureFlix and check it out. You created a 6-episode series, which included Mark Christopher Lawrence. And this is, it's got a Left Behind feel to it. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to play the trailer so our audience can either see or hear it, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
Please stand by for an announcement from the acting president of the United States, President Torres.
My fellow Americans, today we have experienced the greatest global crisis in the history of mankind.
Second Sunday. Everyone left remembers where they were and what they were doing. Sometimes it feels like the ground is shaking again. You never forget something like that.
What we do know is that a mass of the population has gone missing.
It's back there. My baby.
The hardest part isn't them not being here. It's knowing why I am.
Level 4 curfew is now in effect.
Meanwhile, you and your GPC buddies act as if the billions that we've already lost wasn't enough.
Every day, Liberian terrorists wreak havoc on this country.
The whole world fell apart.
They will send an investigator after us.
Because I will report that religious nonsense.
Some people trying to cope while others just trying to survive.
If this fails, I will hang you with it.
Things are gonna get worse. Really bad, okay? I've gotta get out of here.
All gone and we're stuck here in hell. We're in hell!
Nothing like a worldwide crisis to bring out the best of mankind.
I love it. I love it. What a great statement. Nothing like an end of the world crisis to bring out the best in mankind. Great statement. And I think an all too true statement.
Well, and that's the thing, right? I mean, Fragment was this small little short series that I had put together during the lockdown. I had challenged some of my film filmmaking friends to create some new content that turned into the Quarantine Film Festival, which had a crazy response, which I was not prepared for. And a part of that was just these 3 10-minute episodes that me and my family made while we were in lockdown. We couldn't do anything else, so we did this. And it was all based upon using the terminology and the feel of lockdown, what was happening to us, to kind of communicate the idea that what would happen if, billions of the population suddenly went missing. What would the state of the world look like at that point? And we could kind of extrapolate that. And so Fragment Oblivion, when it came time for it it was just taking the last few years from riots and lockdowns and government overreach and, all the things that, looked like our society was just decaying and eroding around us. And then you take and you say, okay, you remove the Christians from the world. I couldn't convey it bad enough because it goes on PureFlix. But if it wasn't going on PureFlix, it would look way worse. It would look tremendously awful. And the idea was to hopefully communicate to people, hey, this is what this is going to look like. And we have a responsibility as believers to make sure that we're telling others about Christ so that they're not here experiencing that.
And Nathan, it's interesting you mentioned that about it looking way worse if it weren't perhaps on a PureFlix. There are other platforms where you can get away with showing a lot more, which isn't a sin. It isn't. It depending on how far you would go. I think Christian filmmakers would do themselves a great service if they would take more chances in just presenting reality. And you can do that without crossing lines of inappropriateness. It's like you kind of know when, okay, I think they got the idea. But I think the tendency to play safe is the prevailing issue with a lot of faith-based filmmaking, because we don't want to upset our programmers. We don't want to upset our viewers who are watching this genre. But at the end of the day, the viewers we want to touch are those that have no clue who Christ is, that have no idea what God really means. And I think during the pandemic, that's when people started to think about their mortality. Like, what's going to happen in the next life? What's next after this? I mean, God stopped the earth. He didn't just stop America. He stopped the earth, and it scared everybody. So I think this is probably as good a time as any for this type of filmmaking. And you do a great job with Fragment, and you have 1 season under your belt. Are you planning on doing more seasons?
I would like to. I would like to do more with Fragment. I don't think I'm done telling the stories yet. I think the difficulty comes as to where it's going to go. PureFlix and Great American merged, and so that changed some of their content desires. That changed some of their audience as well. And so Fragment, though it was doing well, the merger kind of changed what they're looking to do. So if I find a good home for it, I would love to do more. I feel like there's a lot more story to tell with Fragment, a lot more depth to go into. I've toyed with even just taking it from kind of going the route of Firefly and just making a film and saying, okay, we're going to do a Fragment feature, and we're going to explore this world in more depth as a feature, just so I can feel like I was able to round out the story and finish it the way that I wanted to. So that's the hope, at least, right? The hope is to be able to continue to tell the story, continue to talk about it. I mean, you got Mark, you got Isabel, you got Seth, you got Tim, who has been a sleeper agent, is in Empty Nets, tremendous actor, very capable of a lot of things. So really want to be able to continue to share that story, because I think it's important. I think people, like you were saying, we need to make sure that we're telling the gospel. And I do think that there's place, right? There's place for things like the films that encourage the church, and then there's place for films that are evangelical, and I think something like Fragment definitely desires to reach an audience that isn't just churched. And I think we need that, just like we need the other films. So So yeah, I would love to do more. If I can find a home for it, I would definitely do that.
So, ladies and gentlemen, by the way, you're listening to the Maurice Brown Comedy Show on Bog Radio. We're talking with director Nathan Blair and his current effort in Empty Nets. We're talking about the 6 episodic season of Fragment, which you can see on PureFlix. And we're talking about maybe doing more seasons. Gigi Orsillo was also a part of the project here of Fragment Oblivion, but Isaac Hernandez, who has a show called Faith on Film, got a chance to play the president there at the beginning. And we're colleagues in this industry of interviewing directors, screenwriters, and actors. So it was great to see Isaac there in that role. But I want to ask you something, because I watched your interview with Isaac on Faith on Film, and you shared a story about the filming there involving a little mishap with the local authorities. If you don't mind, I mean, would you care to share that with us?
Yeah, no, every time Fragment Oblivion comes up, that's the story. Everybody's like, all right, so this really happened. Yes, our entire cast and crew essentially got arrested. So our second day of production, we were in a city in Colorado and filming. It was late. I had done my due diligence in terms of getting permission and things like that. So let's put that. It's not my fault. I just want to make sure that's clear. We were in the middle of the city. It was like almost midnight. The town was shut down. There's nothing really happening. And we were literally filming our agents coming into a building, and that's it. We weren't trying to do too much. We weren't doing a big, huge, fancy setups or anything like that. But we did have 7 actors in, head to toe tactical gear with balaclavas, and they were holding prop AR-15 rifles. And so they were kind of sneaking in formation and then meeting our agents, our actors on the other side, and they were going to go into this building. And we had shot 3 or 4 angles of takes of that, and we were moving in to do a closer version, just so we had that last setup of the night, when an officer shows up. And in my mind, I've experienced this before on sets where an officer shows up, wants to know what's going on, what are you doing, and you kind of explain. They go, oh, right, okay, cool, thanks, have a good time, make sure they give some parting advice or whatever, and we move on. So I was kind of anticipating a similar situation. So I had started moving forward. I mean, all of us who were crew were wearing safety vests, the reflective ones. So it's not like we were hiding anything. And the car pulls up. I'm moving forward. Door opens, and he just starts yelling us right now. Get down now. Guns drawn, and then out of nowhere, like 20 police units from city, state, and county all start showing up. They surround us. They start pulling out their weapons, getting ready to take us out. And we all end up going down to the ground. They essentially call every single one of us to stand. If you go for a weapon, we will shoot you. Do you understand? That's the question we all got. So we all had to say yes. We all stood up. We were all cuffed. Some of the people were put on the sidewalk. I was shoved in the back of a car, and me and the sound guy and a few others, we were in the back of units, all while trying to explain, look, we've had permission to be here. This is what's going on. So for about an hour plus, they cleared the building. They were trying to communicate. I had the dubious honor of being the closest to actually being shot. I had in front of me, I had people behind me were saying, get up. But the people in front of me, the officers in front of me, couldn't hear them. So when I got up on my knees, the people in front started yelling at me to get down now. And then the people behind me were telling me to get up. And finally I just said, they're telling me to get up. And I could hear the game of telephone as they're like, no, they're talking to him over there. Oh, okay. I was like, oh my goodness.
Wow.
So I ended up
Wow.
standing up, and you could see laser sights on the ground. As you were going, you could see where they were. We saw them putting away their actual real weapons as we're kind of shoot to the side. And finally, once it got cleared up, they said, "Wow, that was just a crazy misunderstanding. That's nuts." I had one guy come to me, the guy in charge, and he says, "Why didn't you think to call the police?" I said, "Actually, I called the mayor's office and talked to the liaison, who said, I will disseminate all this information down so that you guys don't have any problems. So actually, I did my part. I can't help it that you didn't communicate. That's not on me." They said, "You know what that building right over there is? That's the sheriff's office." I said, "Yes, I know exactly what building that is." I'm not like, "Wow, how did this happen?" I was like, "I'm very aware of where we were and what we were doing, hence me calling in advance." And so we all got cuffed, and we didn't get processed. We didn't get anything like that. We were kind of more forcibly detained, I think is the term we settled on. And they kind of herded us over to the side, and then they were gone in like 5 minutes. Gone. Just disappeared. So we were there at like 3 a.m. We had to then clean up everything. We had to clean up all of our gear. We had to reset the church we were at. We had to do, we had about another hour plus of work to do just to get in a place where we could drive home for an hour. I remember getting home and I just got into to bed. It was about 5 o'clock in the morning. I just told my wife, I said, "I have a story to tell you, but I can't tell you right now, but trust me, you're gonna." And I told her, and she was just like, "I can't believe you didn't get shot." I'm like, "I know, it was extremely close." And then the police chief calls me, and he's like, "I had about 20 emails regarding you." I said, "I bet you did. I bet you did. And did any of them tell you that this was your fault? Like you guys could have been shot." And I'm like, "Yes. And you guys would have been liable for shooting us. We had permission to be here." And so it turned really weird really fast. And it's not one of those things that you like. My daughter was on set, so she got handcuffed, and they thought she was a trafficking victim.
Man, oh man.
Our sound guy hit record. He started recording the audio right away. And so he could play back the whole thing. He wears his sound gear is like a big vest thing. And they were asking him, taking off. He's like, I can't. And he's dragging his mic across the concrete, listening to it. They're thinking he's got a bomb vest on. He's like, "It's sound gear." We're all in fluorescent, safety gear. There's a camera in the middle of the road. We're all like, it wouldn't take a genius to look at this and be like, "You know what? They keep coming to and in and out of the building, never go into the building. There's a camera, there's sound." I don't think this is what we think it is. I do understand that they had to do their part, their due diligence, and make sure that, and I would have preferred them to act the way they did. Then, it's no big deal. And it just means we're a little safer. I just didn't like being on the other end of it.
all the glory to Christ, Nathan, because that could have gone left very quickly.
Very quickly. Everybody acted actually. It's a credit to the cast and crew. Everybody handled themselves with, we were a Christian cast and crew, and we handled ourselves with extreme respect. We didn't talk back. We were like, "What's wrong with you?" We didn't, none of that. It was just like, "Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir." Answered the questions. We were like, "We're not doing anything illegal. There's nothing for us to be worried about here." Mark, they were trying to get him in, and he's like, "I'm not going to fit into the back of this unit. Like, it's just not going to happen. His shoulders are so broad." So they just had him sitting on the side, and the officer pulls out his prop gun, and he goes, "This is a toy." And he's like, "Yes, it's a prop. This is a movie." We've said that. Like, everybody here, they kept asking my daughter, do your parents know you're here?" And she goes, "Yes, my dad is the director, Nathan Blair." And they're like, "Well, we don't have a Nathan Blair." And like, they weren't, the agencies weren't communicating, because I was like, "I'm the director. I'm Nathan Blair. My daughter's right over there. Can you just make sure she's okay?" And they're like, yeah. And they weren't communicating. And so we were just stuck in the middle of this mess, as opposed to be like, "Okay, who's in charge?" "I am." "Okay, I get what's going on. We can clean this up." But like I said, I prefer the way that they acted very quickly, thinking that we were an active shooter scene, that we were there to do damage. I also took it as a compliment that our guys looked legit, and that it looked real. So Maybe a little too real, but that's a good thing.
Unfortunately, we're living in a time where you have to take these kinds of situations as law enforcement very seriously, because we don't know what they should have known, but they weren't informed. And thank God it was a Christian faith-based crew that they came upon who didn't overreact, that did follow their commands until they could sort everything out. That's also a reason why a lot of people in the world, situations like that, get shot, because of just simply not following basic commands, being patient, knowing you haven't done anything, and they'll sort it out later. So thank God for that. I want to throw, this is just out of pure curiosity, because there's obviously the use of firearms in the film itself, prop or what have you. And it made me think about the situation that is currently going on with Alec Baldwin, who had the firearm issue on the set of Rust. And it just made me kind of think about, how you guys during the film making of Fragment go about, or what was your approach in dealing with these kind of elements?
Well, the first thing I did is I wanted no live firearms on set.
Got it.
So everything we had from a weapon, we were very specific on what we chose. I worked with a prop maker to make sure that the firearms we had looked fantastic, but were completely and totally inoperable. They couldn't do anything. So the most dangerous thing we had is they could be used as a club. And that was going to be about it. And my plan going into it was to work with my VFX team and really, really figure out how to best shoot this so that it had the realism we wanted, but also the safety. We also wanted to make sure that we treated everything, even though it's completely inert, it's a paperwork, we wanted to treat it as if it was real. We just wanted to make sure everybody knew. So every location we went to, from that point forward, I called ahead to every city, every location where we would have firearms on site, talked to the police directly. And I just said, hey, this is what we're doing. We have permission to be here. This is what we're looking at. There isn't anything going on. Just wanted to let you know. So if something weird comes up, and to the credit of the police, they were like, okay, thank you for letting us know. We appreciate that. You're good to go. And then anytime we showed up a location where we had firearms, we made sure if there was security. We were at a place, Save the Storks in Colorado Springs, let us film at their office, which was fantastic. And we went through their security and said, here are our props. Feel free to inspect every single one of them. Inspect all of our gear. Make sure that you're completely and totally safe. I over-explained everything that we were doing, including all of our stunts, including, just being like, yeah, I just want to make sure and so, we wanted to make sure we were doing everything we could to be as safe as possible with that. Even still, there are times when we'd found these giant bags, black bags. So we put all of our prop weapons in the bags and we're carrying them inside. And I just it just looks shady. No matter how much you try and make it not look shady, somebody's carrying a giant black duffel bag in, and you see these black clad people and you're like, something's not going right. So it's good to be communicative with it. And then, everybody, anytime we heard sirens until we wrap, everybody got there was a little like, okay, that happened. It just kind of reminded you of where you were and what happened. And, we can tell the story. We can kind of joke about it now, but we're very fortunate nothing happened. And then just making sure we were safe beforehand. Like I said, we had no live firearms anywhere near set. So when the police were asking us, what's this film about? We were like, well, it's kind of like this, except for you're the only people here that actually could shoot anybody. Like we have no weapons. So we're good. So I think when you look at something like the Rust situation, as tragic as it is, there's somebody missed something somewhere, right? Why was there a round in that weapon in the first place? What communication was missed? Generally you don't aim a gun at a camera anyway. I get it from an artistic standpoint. But that should have been checked multiple times, and just to make sure, even before, if it's put into his hand, to make sure that that's good. I mean, I think there's a lot of responsibility in a lot of places on that one, and it's a tragedy.
It's a real tragedy, and you don't hear about these kinds. There have been all types of films made, great films made, where there were firearms being used in one way, shape, form, or another, whether they were real or they were not. I mean, a lot of great films have been made, and there've been no tragedies to speak of, other than Brandon Lee, Bruce Lee's son. And I don't think it had anything to do with firearms.
It was 100% firearms.
Oh, was it? Okay, gotcha. Okay,
so that was a tragic one as well. Yeah.
Okay, but outside of that, you don't normally hear about it. A lot of these films, they do a great job of keeping the environment safe as they're doing it. So I just thought
and it's an expensive thing. Being able to have a gun wrangler on set, somebody who's a safety officer, props master, a weapons master. You have lots of hands, and then you look at actually handling the weapons. Like even on Empty Nets, we had swords involved, and so my thing was keeping it as safe as possible, but making sure that somebody's in charge of paying attention to that. We talked about the safety, what's going to be our safest thing. How do we utilize it so that it still has the effect we want, without it being something where we're like, yeah, somebody's going to lose an ear, and there's Jesus isn't here to put it back. So let's be real smart about this.
Let's be real smart about that. Absolutely, Nathan. I totally agree with you. We've got the International Christian Film Festival coming up in May in Orlando, Florida, and it's that is founded by Marty Jean Louis. It's going into his 12th iteration of the festival. It's kind of like the Christian Oscars. And Marty Jean is actually the founder of Bog Radio, where we're broadcasting from now. And it's going to be May 1st through the 4th. And my question to you is, do you have, or will you have, any projects represented or nominated at this year's ICFF?
I don't know about nominations. I guess we'll find that out later in March.
Okay.
We did submit Once Upon a Christmas, which is the Christmas film that I've done with my nonprofit called Crosswind Productions, where I work with young filmmakers, essentially the next generation of filmmakers. In this particular case, I've partnered with a homeschool program called Artios Academies, and the high school students were the key cast and crew. So I had a few adults and professionals come in, but mostly it was the students doing all the work. So my daughter and I wrote the film, and it's kind of a mashup of A Christmas Carol and 17 Again, kind of joined together. So Scrooge goes back to high school. And it's definitely a comedy, but it's a comedy with a lot of heart. One of the things I love about Christmas Carol is, the showing of Scrooge's life. But the thing that they always fall short for me on is they never explain that true transformation. Like he's kind of like, oh, I want to be a better man. That's great, but you need Christ for that, right? You need that salvation that, makes you new from the inside out. And so that's where something like Once Upon a Christmas kind of takes it to that next level, where we really want to make sure that people understand, the audience will walk away being like, it's not about good works. It's not about being a good person. It's not about, it has nothing to do with this. As the story unfolds, one mark in your ledger that is negative is enough to determine your fate forever. Because it has to be a perfect ledger. It has to be perfect. It can't be soiled at all. Yes. And the moment you have one mark, you're forever doomed. And it's our character, Carol Coleman, who has to figure this out and kind of comes to grips with the fact that he's got to change from the inside and what that actually means. And so I really love Once Upon a Christmas in a way that it's one of my favorite stories. I think it's very funny, but it's got a lot of heart to it. And I loved working with the students on it. These kids have never been on a film set or never acted in a film. They're all extremely talented, so that makes it really easy. They took to it very quickly. I got to work with Gary Nation. We got Jewel Christian in there, and they did a fantastic job. Melissa Nunley came in, so we had some people who were generous with their time to be a part of this project and tell the story. So that one I'm really excited about. That should be releasing at Christmas this year. So we filmed it last 2 Christmases ago, tried to get it out on time and just couldn't meet it. So we're able to get it out this year. So that one's been submitted. It won bronze for best comedy at the ICVM Crown Awards last week. So I feel like we did a pretty good job with it.
Well, you've done 7 films, as you mentioned on the onset of the show. You've done 7 films. You've done Fragment, Oblivion. You've done a lot of work in the film industry. I'm sure you've had a lot of experiences, Nathan, where you've seen something out of the ordinary. You've had a conversation with the mentor that knew more about the industry than yourself, and you learned something from that conversation. Clearly an experience that you just described about the authorities there misidentifying the situation and having to go through that. You've seen a lot of different things. What's the biggest thing you've learned as a director during your time being involved in this industry that's made you better at it?
I think, and I was teaching today, and I teach a directing class, and one of the things that stood out, we're going through John MacArthur's The Book on Leadership, which is a fantastic book. Follows the life of Paul and some of the leadership qualities that he displayed.
Yes.
One of the things about being a director, being in this industry, is understanding your calling, as it pertains to what you're to do for the kingdom, not necessarily for your vocation. I'm very passionate about film. I feel called into the film industry, and I'm fortunate that my calling lines up with a vocation. But I admire people whose calling is not vocation based, and they can take that calling into whatever job that they do. But the most important thing is to realize that my calling is not my identity. Being a director isn't my identity. Being a leader, being a writer, being an actor, being whatever you are isn't your identity. Your identity is solely in Christ.
Yes.
And I've had a kind of a pet peeve with people in this industry who have said, I'm a filmmaker, I'm a producer, I'm an actor who happens to be Christian. And that's always just bothered me. Because we should be, as Christians, we should be identified as a Christian who happens to be a filmmaker.
Right. Yes.
Because Christ, I want when people see me to see Christ. I don't want them to see me as a filmmaker. Yes, I want to be a great filmmaker. I want to go down in the annals of history as the greatest Christian filmmaker ever, right? You don't get into an industry like this without having the dream of being like, I want to be great at it, but I don't want to be great at it for my name. I want to be great at it because this was the opportunity and the place that the Lord put me to serve him, to worship him. And to be in a situation where I am a Christian filmmaker. That is who I am. That's what I do. Maybe not all my films are going to look like you would think a Christian filmmaker's films would look like. Sleeper Agent's one of those examples where people go, is that a Christian film? 100% it is. 100%. I'm working on a thriller that is going to be 100% a Christian film, but it's going to appeal to a general audience. That's its intent. Doesn't change that it's a Christian film, because I am a Christian filmmaker and I want to make content that brings glory and honor to Christ because that's my identity. My identity is in him, and it is only for him and through him that something is possible. And so I think the biggest thing I could learn was that it wasn't about me being a director. It wasn't about me being a producer or a writer or an actor or whatever. It was about me being a Christian, being called by Christ's name, and taking that into my directing, into my writing, into my producing, and making sure that, I tell my kids all the time, at the end of all things, what is going to matter? When I'm, hopefully old and gray and, have lived a full, useful life, and I get to have that moment, I can look back and say, I spent my time doing the things that mattered, and building the things that mattered. And it's not going to be building me. It's going to be, at that point, I'm going to say, did I do enough to tell people about Christ? Did I do enough to tell them? And I'm going to think about it. My wife lost her dad a year and a half ago. And he was one of those people that, as he was going through this, he had a list of people. Will you follow up with these people? I've been talking to them about Christ. That was his burden. And I think if we do our job, whether it's a director, whether it's a producer, whether it's a plumber, putting our identity in Christ, our burden should be making sure that other people know that as well. And that it's never about being a director. It's always about being a servant of Christ.
Amen. Amen. Director Nathan Blair on the Maurice Brown Comedy Show. Thank you so much, everyone out there, for hanging out with us this morning with your cup of coffee. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. It's been great hanging out with Mr. Blair. He's got a current project out now, not out yet, but underway, called Empty Nets. We should see that in the very near future. And by the way, if you have enjoyed this interview and you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe and share from the Maurice Brown Comedy channel. Also, you can see this and hear it on Spotify next week. So if you're coming in at the very end, you're like, I missed it. You can listen and watch on Spotify, and as well as YouTube. I want to thank Nathan Blair once again for being on the show. Nathan, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Can't wait for Empty Nets, and may the peace of Christ be with you and your family. God bless you.
Thank you very much for having me.